Welcome to all of our listeners. Today we have Andrea, who is the creator of Uglygrowth. She is an incredible coach, and I met her in the EBA space, the previous coaching program, business coaching program that I recently partook in. And again, amazing connection. So I'm so grateful to have her in the space. Welcome, Andrea.
Hi, Samantha. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
So I would love to know what inspired Uglygrowth, because it's such a captivating name.
Yeah. So Uglygrowth was really the creation that I came to based off of my own healing journey and kind of going on that journey and realizing that there's a lot of resistance that comes up along the way, and it's really challenging to look at, those sort of shadow parts of ourselves and maybe the things that we've been able to keep under wraps for a long time. And now it's all coming to the surface and unearthing that. And that process is not always comfortable. In fact, I'd say it's mostly not comfortable. And, there's a lot of emotions that come with it and physical sensations. And I think as humans, we tend to avoid things that are uncomfortable. We tend to resist them. But that's where the magic is. It's in that resistance. It's in leaning into that. So I think I just wanted to normalize the ugly aspects that do come with the growth journey and help people realize that there is beauty to be found in it. And that's where the nuggets are. That's where the wisdom is. And the more we can lean into that process, the better that we can come out on the other side and, more aware, more conscious, and just, stepping more fully into the truth of who we are.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not all love and light.
Yeah. And like, that's the thing. I used to think there was something wrong with me because I saw like so many sort of spiritual leaders and stuff like that. And people who I perceived to be as successful that were basically saying, you have to be positive all the time if you want to be able to like be a leader and help people. And I was like, well, like I'm definitely not positive all the time. So maybe I'm just like not cut out for this sort of work. Like maybe I just can't because, I'm too negative and I'm too dark and all of these things. And yeah, that's been a whole journey of just getting over that old story, right? Because that was definitely a block for me.
I relate so much to what you just shared. I think too that struggle of feeling we have to be in the light all the time is something that all humans, I think, experience, not just, more so for a leader as well. But I know for myself, I had that whole process of just really believing that something was inherently wrong with me because I had all these dark thoughts and emotions and had nowhere to feel safe to express them. And so I just like bottled them all up and walked around with so much shame. So yeah, I love that we're normalizing shame in this space because it's so natural, that a thing that we all experience. And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, at the core, I love that it's about embracing our wholeness, our humanity, the parts of us that are innately human and also divine simultaneously, holding these coexisting, contradicting truths within our being, our multidimensionality, the trauma, the fears, the self-aversion, and learning to be with, not necessarily love, like, and want to accept, but just being with those parts of us. And that, I feel like for me, that's created the most safety within myself is, oh, there's that judgmental part. There's that part that wants to sabotage this or that, or, and just being like, can I be with this? Can I sit with this emotion, this like you said, the sensations. I think that because there's such a disconnect to our bodies, that being with those sensations can feel so icky, you know?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. And I think the natural impulse as humans is to just try and get rid of it.
Right.
But it's exactly as you said, like it's not how quickly can you get rid of it and like wish it away and judge it and condemn it. It's how can you hold it and integrate it as part of your common like human experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So true. Integration. I'm loving that word right now.
Mm.
It is this process because, as you mentioned, like the conditioning is so, so strong and so deep and pervasive. And and also as Janessa said, if we don't have spaces and mentors to safely express these parts that are largely rejected by our culture, then they become repressed, and then they express themselves in really not pleasant ways or harmful ways potentially.
I like the term like sideways, comes out sideways.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, like, even like, I don't like to use the term like rejected by anything outside of us because I think it always comes down to a time when we rejected ourselves. And
Yeah.
that's when those parts go inside because I think it's really easy to like be constantly pointing the finger at everything external. And that's a big part of my work is helping people realize now, like, the responsibility is always on the self.
Yes.
Like that's really the only place that you can stay empowered, right? Because if it's always something that is coming and it's like someone else's fault or the society's fault or culture's fault, not to say that there's not very real external circumstances and it's not always ideal, it's not always optimal, but the more that we can come back to ourselves and come back to what role we have to play, I think that is the best place that we can be in terms of being able to like be more conscious of the way that we are creating our life, our reality.
Absolutely. Yeah, what I meant by that, I think, is just how we internalize and how we are programmed, but definitely at a certain point we have to be like, okay, well, this is my choice, I have a choice and sovereignty over my life and my being and how I relate to life and how I respond to life. And from that place, we can't, that's the hero's or heroine's journey from being the victim to the victor or the co-creator of our lives.
Mm.
So what I love, I'm curious, what is like a useful micro practice that you teach your clients that our listeners could benefit from to like catch when they are maybe judging a certain part of them or looping in a negative emotion and are just kind of stuck in that place of victimhood?
Definitely. I think something that has been really beneficial for me, and it's something that I catch myself going through with my clients all the time, is obviously like becoming aware of when you're triggered and looking at the actual story that you've associated with the trigger. So it's kind of like, if we're going to use that example of rejected, right? It's if people are saying like, oh, like my boyfriend rejected me, or my partner betrayed me, and all of these sort of like evaluations, like people often say like I felt rejected or I felt betrayed, and that's not a feeling, that's an evaluation that we've put on the circumstance. And it's almost never about the present moment experience. It's about something that happened very early on and then became a self-imposed limitation. So I think the best thing to do when people are feeling triggered and maybe overcome with emotions is just to look at what is actually happening. Like, what are the concrete actions that have taken place not the story that I've associated with it, not the he rejected me. It's just, he said this, some words came out of his mouth. He used hot air to form language, and you took that to mean something about yourself. And the more that we can look at that and challenge our existing perceptions, because really our perceptions, as I already said, are based on our pre-installed constraints and our fears and our past wounding, and we tend to project that onto our present moment experience. And we, like, humans are meaning making machines. Like we create meaning out of things that aren't necessarily truth, right? So I think just a good practice to get into is noticing when you're triggered, definitely, and being able to look at what is happening here and what is arising within me. Because often when we're triggered, we think it's the other person's fault, and it's something that they did or they said, but like the trigger is within us. Right? Like if you're feeling triggered, that means there's some sort of ammunition within you that is asking to be looked at. It's coming to the surface. It's ready to be investigated. So I think, just being willing to have that process of self-inquiry from a very compassionate place, like not making it wrong, not making yourself wrong, like no judgment, is a really beneficial practice, because that means that we can stay more open in certain situations where we might close off. Does that make
easy? So easy to want to close off.
Yeah.
The practice. Yeah, it makes complete sense. Janessa.
I was just going to say thank you for sharing that. And I had this bubbling urge to ask you, what experiences have you had in your life that really allowed you to get to this point of feeling like, wow, I have this deep awareness and wisdom, and I've accumulated all these tools, and now I feel ready to share it? Like, was there any like pivotal moments in your life where you're like, I need to share this with other people?
Yeah, I mean,
that's a big question, but
yeah, I think there's definitely been a few. I mean, so my mom was sick. She had cancer. She has since passed from cancer. But basically, while she was sick, I read this book, When the Body Says No, by Dr. Gabor Mate. And that was like a huge catalyst for me in learning about how our early childhood trauma manifests in our body later in life as stress, illness, cancer, especially like autoimmune dysfunction. And I saw that playing out in my mom, like in real time. And I realized that I was basically the same. Like, obviously I'd learned about how to process my emotions from her. And by processing emotions, I was basically just not looking at them at all. Like it was a practice of avoidance, of burying, of not talking about, not expressing, and just not ever being with my genuine human experience. And I struggled as a result with a lot of anxiety and depression. And it was really hard after she passed, because I didn't have the tools. Like, I didn't know how to grieve. Like, I just wanted to run away, and I did run away. I left Canada. I got on a flight. I booked a one-way ticket to Medellin, Colombia, and I thought that I could just kind of run away from that whole experience and avoid my emotions forever. And, the excitement of being in a new country, it did help for a bit. I was like, yeah, meeting new people, partying, having fun. This is great. So it's like a Band-Aid solution. But after like 6 months there, this same sort of familiar depression came right back. And I was like, shit, like this, I thought I could outrun it. I really thought I could. And it turns out I could not. And basically I had already tried what I thought were the options available to me in terms of healing. Like I had done a lot of counseling and therapy, and my doctor had prescribed me anti-anxiety meds at one point, and I just couldn't bring myself to fill the prescription when the time came to it. And so I just knew that those options were not for me personally. And being in Colombia, I had access to a lot of like alternative modalities, especially plant medicine ceremonies. So I know like ayahuasca is kind of a big word right now. I think a lot more people are becoming aware of plant medicines and their ability to heal, which is amazing. This was like 3 years ago, and I had never really heard of these medicines at that time. So I started doing my own research, and I was scared, obviously. Like, I think what tends to be in the news is only like the worst possible stories of like, oh, this tourist died at an ayahuasca ceremony. It's like, well, maybe I shouldn't do that. But that's really not how it is. Like, that's a very rare instance. And in Colombia, like, you could do an ayahuasca ceremony every day if you wanted to. Like, there are so many shamans, and it's so accessible. Like, it would be the equivalent of like $20 to do a ceremony. Like,
wow.
You don't have to go to like these big fancy retreat centers, as like a lot of North Americans do. A lot of North American people like to do that, and that's totally fine, but like, you don't have to do that. So yeah, I started working with plant medicine. Ayahuasca was the first one, and then started working with mushrooms, doing like deep solo journeys with mushrooms. And I'd say that was when I had my first sort of like ego dissolving experience of going beyond the veil and realizing like, wow, I've been living quite a shallow life, quite a shallow existence. And I've been putting so much value on what I look like specifically. Like, I was very consumed by my image, my physical image, constantly picking myself apart in the mirror. And it just like, it was such an energy leak. And I just like had no idea how much that was taking from me. And I feel like I really transcended that. That was my first like huge realization of like, wow, like this does not matter at all. Like, I am not my body. Like, my body is just like the vessel that I get to experience life through. And like, I felt such immense joy. And I think like joy is the natural result of transcending something which previously held you back. And that was like the first time that I really felt like, I mean, since childhood probably, that I was like joyful. I was full of joy. And I just kind of realized like, why don't people know about like
about joy?
Yeah, about joy and mushrooms. Like, I was just like, holy shit, like this is huge. Like, I need to be doing more to like tell people about these alternative medicines and other options for healing. Because at that point, like, no one I knew was talking about plant medicine. Like, microdosing like wasn't a thing that was being talked about yet, or if it was like still very, very underground. So that's when I started my blog, and I started writing about my experiences. And that was like, I bought my domain, uglygrowth.com, and had no intention of becoming a coach at that point. But it just sort of unfolded, and I ended up joining a training program with Dr. Gabor Mate, who was the author of that book that was the catalyst, like, so many years ago, of learning about that, that connection between illness and childhood trauma. So he has his own therapeutic training called Compassionate Inquiry, and it's a year-long program. And I did that training, and it was so transformative for me, because like, you have every single week you're practicing the modality, both as the therapist and as the client. So not only are you learning this incredible tool, you're also doing really deep inner work yourself and uncovering all those traumas and how they're impacting your life, and diving into those triggers, challenging your perceptions. So that was a big experience for me, and really made me feel like I could start helping people. Like I had the tools now, I had a little bit of confidence, and I was like, you know what, like people need help. And I felt like I had come far enough along on my journey that I could start offering like some sort of coaching services. And so like pretty much a year ago, just over a year ago, so March 2021, is when I launched my first like group one-on-one hybrid program called the Mind to Heart Method. And I had like 4 people sign up, and it was awesome, and it was so exciting. And since then I've just really been expanding my knowledge even more, and learning different modalities and more tools to help people with disentangling those existing narratives of, limitation, and getting past those subconscious blocks, because really it's all just a conversation that happens in our head, and like helping people get past that and like actually find freedom on the other side. Like true freedom is definitely the most rewarding thing I could ever imagine doing. And it really lights me up.
Mm.
It's a long story, but
no, so perfect.
Really potent, beautiful story. I love how just the universe, the goddess, however you relate to that word, was guiding you so beautifully on your path, and then creating all these synchronicities for you to meet this man who wrote that book that you read when your mom was going through cancer, and now here you are offering and being of service to the world in this really beautiful way.
I'm very, very grateful to be doing the work that I do, and I also I know that this is just the beginning, so it's really exciting.
I didn't know that much about your background before we had you on, but I have a lot of parallels with you, finding ayahuasca, plant medicine, and been microdosing with mushrooms for several years, and also launched a group program with 4 women last year around the same time. So that's it's beautiful. I love how we're all being like, the consciousness of the planet is really supporting us to step into our power and begin to offer these alternative healing modalities to the world, because we can look around and it's quite obvious that our planet and a lot of the people on it are out of balance. And thank you to these plant medicines, these elders, teachers that are helping bring us back into alignment, and taking us beyond the veil and revealing to us our true nature and our potential as humans, as beings of love and all the things.
I mean, it's so true. Like once I realized that I no longer needed to use all of my brain capacity to like worry about what I looked like, it's like, holy shit, I have so much freedom now to think about things that actually matter and like make a difference in the world. So I mean, I can't thank plant medicine enough for opening up my mind in that way.
Yeah, that's funny, because me and Janessa used to like spend literally probably like 2 hours getting ready before a party or things like that. Just it's crazy, the conditioning around our bodies, and how we're so at war with our bodies, and that we have to alter ourselves to receive love, validation, acceptance in this world. And the amount of energy that does free up, that's still a part of my journey, but there's definitely been freed from it for a long time in some capacity. And I love how you also brought up freedom and joy, because for me, those words are synonymous.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do this work and we go to these steps and begin to examine and reprogram these beliefs and narratives that are living in our body and coming out in unconscious ways, when we do that, we create that space for freedom and joy. And as you mentioned, you were able to also embrace these emotions that you had suppressed for most of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a big one. Like the first time I took mushrooms, like a high dose mushroom experience, I just cried the whole time. I just cried for hours and hours and hours. I didn't even know what I was crying about, but it was obviously just like so many years of pent up tears that needed to fall and have their space.
Yeah, and I love that, like for me now, when I have, when I just cry uncontrollably and there's no inherent reason, I don't beat myself up about not knowing what it's about. Like I just allow the emotions to flood through me and to fully experience it without trying to analyze it or pick it apart and be like, why? Like I feel like humans are so stuck in wanting to know the why. And
Absolutely.
it really, yeah.
The meaning making.
The meaning making.
Yeah, but it keeps us from actually just like experiencing the present moment, right? Because we're so up in our head of like, but why is this happening? It's like, okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter why it's happening. Like just be with it.
Well, I think knowing the reason why for some reason creates this false sense of security or like safety or something like that. I guess that's where I imagine that it comes from.
That makes a lot of sense. And in regards to pleasure, because this is the Pleasure Alchemy podcast.
Yes.
I've noticed and I've seen that women who repress their emotions, who don't allow themselves to cry, to grieve, to feel and embrace anger in a sacred way, that it dulls our ability to experience pleasure in our body and sexual energy. And kind of, if you suppress one thing, it kind of, it's that life force energy that in essence we are suppressing. And so when we allow that fluidity of our emotions to move through us and to be in right relationship to our bodies and our emotions, then we can feel more pleasure, and our orgasmic potential increases infinitely. And you mentioned that you are now starting to embrace your sexuality a little bit more. Can you share on that, please?
Yeah. And I think, I've had so much resistance to sort of like opening Pandora's box in a sense. Like I wanted to do all of the inner work, like and just avoid pleasure as much as I could. But I think I finally got to that point, honestly, just within the last few months of like, I need to look at this. Like this is just begging now to be sorted through in a sense. So it's been a learning process, and I'm 28 years old, and I still feel like I'm just starting to learn about my body and what feels good to me. And I bought basically a masturbation workshop, and it's like a nude workshop, and it's like the woman is what's her Instagram handle? I think it's My Orgasmic Life. She said call herself the Brene Brown of pussy.
Check her out.
Yeah, you should. I think she's like transitioning. She's changing careers a little bit. She's moving into like more of a pottery creation or something like that. But anyway, her online presence has been very like sexuality focused for the last few years. And she has this workshop called Body Sex. And yeah, I like started going through that, and I just felt like, like a foreigner, kind of like looking at my own body for the first time and like feeling what actually feels good to me. And it was an intimidating process for me. I think I have like a lot of repressed shame and guilt around that, like after a very Catholic upbringing, and just not really having anyone to talk to about sexuality. And I've been working on, more deeply embodying pleasure in my body, through sensual dance and, grinding my hips and just, all these sort of like simple ways that I've maybe lost touch with over the years and become sort of rigid in a sense. Like, I mean, I would love to go out dancing when I was younger, like 18, 19, and dance drunk, but that was the only time that I was ever dancing. So I think recently I've made it actually part of my like everyday morning routine that I have to get into my body, at least, even if it's just one song, just allowing myself that space to feel into what's going on in my body that day and tuning into the felt sense of what it's like to inhabit this meat suit. Right. So I think it's definitely still in the beginning phases for me, but I can already feel that just allowing myself to feel on all levels is such a crucial aspect of growth. And I moved through like feeling the deep emotions, and I have no problem allowing myself to cry. But it's like now I'm learning, okay, I'm also learning how to feel orgasms, right? And like allow myself to experience those as well, which, it's a learning curve. But I mean, I'm so grateful I'm doing this work now, because I think there's a lot of women that, are maybe even like getting into old age and they've never allowed themselves to explore their bodies in that way and really experience pleasure. So
it's never too late.
Yeah.
Or too early.
Yeah, too.
Yeah, definitely.
I love it. Yeah. Bring simplicity into it, like just dancing, all the ways in which we can access pleasure in our bodies and in our daily life. I know Janessa, I mean, I'm a big ecstatic dancer, but I know Janessa has a conscious movement practice as well that she does.
Yes. And I'm most recently getting really obsessed with playing with archetypes and how to incorporate certain archetypal energy into my dance practice, which is just so powerful and amazing. And I also teach that to my clients as well. And it's something that my clients especially are like so surprised by. Like they're like, whoa, I didn't know I could feel that energy or that sensation or feeling in my body. And it's so amazing how quickly it can happen if we allow ourselves to go in that space and to be present with ourselves and just open and curious to trying something maybe different or uncomfortable or out of the ordinary for them.
Yeah, I think so many people like are just not willing to try. Like lots of people won't even dance like alone by themselves in the dark.
Yeah.
So it's breaking through some really old programming of that internalized shame, I guess, and belief that you can get it wrong and all of that. There is no getting it wrong.
No.
Yeah, I see this correlation, especially if one has experienced a lot of sexual, physical, psychological abuse growing up in their childhood, growing up in a place where happiness and joy and abundance or feeling good, feeling safe in your body is not the normal, then accessing these levels of pleasure in your body or just to be embodied to any degree can feel very, very unsafe. And that is, as you're saying, it's very common for women this to kind of be like the last thing that they do on their journey of self-discovery and self-realization, actualization. So yeah, even for me, like when I'm self-pleasuring, there's still sometimes the voice is like, am I allowed to feel this good? Like, and it's just like, yes, I deserve to be happy. I deserve to feel pleasure. Pleasure is safe in my body. So yeah, just normalizing that it's such a deep, intimate, sacred process. This process of coming home to our bodies and coming into that loving, nourishing relationship with ourselves and our sexuality. But that's so worth it.
Definitely.
So you already kind of mentioned this, but we ask all of our guests if what is bringing you the most pleasure in your life right now, I would say, besides dancing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that brings me the most pleasure is just being very, very intentional with my space and like with my body. So, for example, like in the morning, I make sure to, light some incense, and, I do card pulls and I do journaling and all these sorts of things that I think for many years I just sort of like disregarded. And everything that's in my space has a purpose, and as Marie Kondo would say, it sparks joy. And even just something as simple as like, I'm going to read a book for the afternoon, I'll light a candle, I'll put on my favorite hoodie, and I'll get like a cozy blanket, and like then I'll settle into a reading nook, with my favorite tea as well. So it's just finding like almost those little moments of luxury, even like having my shower, doing so by candlelight and with some music on, and like making sure I have a fluffy towel to like wrap myself in afterward. It's all those sorts of like little moments that add up to a greater experience of, yeah, I've used the word luxury in the past, but it is pleasure. It is pleasure. And that's like those little moments for me that really make the big difference.
That sounds so delicious, all of it.
I want all that right
now. Yeah, I've loved getting to know you, just seeing how many parallels we have. And I'm grateful that you decided and said yes to come on to our podcast. And curious, where can our people follow you or find you?
Yeah, so I'm the most active over on Instagram. It's at Uglygrowth, or I have a website as well. It's www.uglygrowth.com. So yeah, I'd say those are the two main places. And then I also have my own podcast. Actually, it's also called Uglygrowth. So if anyone wants to search that on Spotify or wherever and learn a little bit about me and my story. I mean, we covered a lot of it today, but yeah, that's always there as a resource as well.
Thank you so much for being here. So good to get to know you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Yeah, and we'll add all the links in the bio so that you guys can access Andrea very easily. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I also will leave information for people that want to access that book, because I'm curious about that as well.
Heck yes.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful, beautiful day. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Thank you.